So I've been in Chiang Mai, Thailand now for approaching almost 5 months. And I thought today'd be a good day to take a little walk and talk about the pros and cons, in my opinion, of living here in Chiang Mai, Thailand. So we'll jump right in and start with the cons. Con number one would be that we are now in burning season. And in burning season, the farmlands all around the town, they burn the crops and it sends tons and tons of smoke into the air. It's already hot, but the smoke makes visibility very, very poor. It burns your eyes, it chokes your lungs. It's one of the few times sometimes you wish you did have a mask when you were walking around. This lasts usually between February and May each year. Right now we're in March. We really didn't have much of a smoky season during February. At least it wasn't that bad. But now here in March, the visibility's just gotten terrible. So that is, in my opinion, the number one con of living in Chiang Mai. Number two would be anything dealing with traffic or driving in this town. It is hazardous, to say the least. It's probably, out of all the countries that I've been to, Thailand is the worst for driving. Literally crossing the street here, nobody on their motorbikes or the vehicles even recognize the crosswalks. It doesn't matter if there's a light going or not. Nobody's paying attention. Very easy to get run over. Many times on the news since I've been here in Chiang Mai, I've heard about people getting killed at what are called zebra crossings, which are the crosswalks going around the traffic. Also, if you're riding a motorbike, you may be doing a good job, you may know what you're doing, but that doesn't mean that anybody around you is paying any attention and isn't going to just swerve into you at any moment. So driving is incredibly hazardous in Thailand, and out of all the countries that I've driven in, this was the one to where it was absolutely the worst. Chiang Mai is not, in my opinion, as bad as like Phuket, where I think it's even worse, but it's still bad. Yeah, it would not be a place for an inexperienced motorcyclist or driver to be. Con number three would be the English language level. Although there is enough English in Chiang Mai that you can get around, it's not as prevalent as in the Phuket area, or really even in Bangkok in my experience. Once you get away from some of the central tourist areas, such as the Old Town or the Nimon area, the level of English goes down dramatically. Again, you can get by with it, without it, but it's not easy, and it does make living here a little less easy than it would be in some other places in the world where you do have higher English levels. Con number four would have to be the visa issues. This is really to Thailand in general, more so than Chiang Mai, but Chiang Mai is set up to where it's really, really a good place to stay long term or to do slow travel for several months. And there really isn't any perfect visas for what you would call a digital nomad at the moment, or a remote worker who wants to go to a place and stay for 6 months. Definitely there are long-term visas that are available in Thailand and that you could use in Chiang Mai. Anybody who tells you there's not is either lying to you or trying to sell you something. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're easy to get, or that you don't have to spend some money or some time in order to have those visas. It also makes the place a very transient, because folks have to either make visa runs or sometimes they just leave altogether. All right, the final drawback or con to living in Chiang Mai is gonna be, in my opinion, now it's just kind of boring. When I first got here, even the waterfalls and the stuff outside of the city, you really couldn't, they were closed down because of everything that was going on in the world. The malls weren't closed, but the outside was. So you couldn't go up to waterfalls. You couldn't go to a lot of the nature parks. Now those have reopened, but now again, this is the smoky season, so it's not exactly the time that I want to be in the great outdoors. Whereas earlier in October and November and December, that would have been nice, but a lot of them they simply weren't open, or many of them were just closed altogether. Also, a lot of things have closed down here since the reset of the world has been going on, and there's just not as many things to do. There is some nightlife that I've seen if you're into that, but again, it's not where it was before, and it's certainly not the same as places down like Pattaya or Bangkok or Patong on Phuket. So I got kind of bored staying here, and so I consider that a con. It can also be a positive though. If you're wanting to go to a place, get a lot of work done, and just concentrate and not have a lot of distractions, then it's an excellent place to go and get those things done. All right, so now for the pros, at least as I see them in Chiang Mai. Number one, and this has to be the biggest pro, at least in my book, is the value that you get in Chiang Mai. All of Thailand, you get a lot of value for your money as far as accommodations and rental spaces, but Chiang Mai is just off the wall. It's not that you can't get places to rent in other countries in the world that are necessarily as inexpensive as here, but the value you get for that money is just really, really nice. So for instance, I'm living in what would be considered probably a high end on the price range in Chiang Mai, and I pay $600 a month for a 3-bedroom condo. Modern, it's a very modern combo, Western showers, 3 bathrooms, 3 bedrooms, giant screen TVs, fully furnished, tile floors, just an amazing value for the money. So you split that between 3 people, each taking a room, you got a really, really nice place for basically $200 a month, which is just phenomenal. So it's like that all over. In addition to being able to get really reasonable expenses, the short-term rental market is very open here. So you really don't have to get into long-term leases. You can do short-term leases, and you can still get really, really reasonable rates. Number 2, as far as the pros go, is the food. There are delicious foods, both Thai and Western, plus other Asian, such as Japanese or Korean. Pretty much anything that you want, you can find here in Chiang Mai. And the costs are very, very low. If you want to eat street food, you can do that for less than a couple dollars a meal. But even when you go and eat Western restaurants, sometimes you will pay more than you would in the West, but it's still not to the point of being more expensive than, say, Eastern European when I was there. So really, really affordable on the cost of food. The variety is just amazing of the different selections. All right, number 3. This has got to be the greatest city that I have ever been to anywhere in the world. If you were wanting to bootstrap a business from the ground up, you're wanting to go and do a project that you want to concentrate on, or that you want to just be a digital nomad or a remote worker. The infrastructure here is great. The internet is great. It is very low cost compared to even the United States or Western European. Quite frankly, I think the infrastructure, the internet infrastructure, for me has been better than what I had when I was in the United States. The cost of living is very low. Again, you get tons of value for your money on that, and you can come here with very little amounts of money, and you can work remotely, save up money, have good infrastructure to do that. Or if you're an entrepreneur and you're going to be building a business or working on a project, this is a great place to get that done, because you've got all the resources that you need here, very low cost, very little distractions. And I can't think of a single country or city for that matter, anywhere else in the world that I've been that ticks all of those boxes as much as Chiang Mai does. Next pro would be the weather. Not necessarily right now. Like I say, this is the smoky season, but from about June until January of every year, the weather is really, really good in Chiang Mai compared to the rest of Thailand. In the fall, or what I would consider the fall, in October and November, December, and January, the weather is really cool, especially in the mornings. It's still warm in the afternoons, but you get temperatures sometimes down even to the, that I had in this fall, down to the upper 50s in the evenings and the early mornings. So it's much cooler than it is in the south, and because of that, you're not going to use as much air conditioning. Electricity costs will be lower for you. And then the final thing that I think is a pro of Chiang Mai, doesn't really apply to me, but it does to my friends, is if you're vegan. There are plenty of options here, whereas a lot of places that I've gone before don't have that. Again, that doesn't matter to me. I don't care, but I know it does to a lot of people who are travelers and have a hard time finding it. So that's it. Those are the pros and cons as I see them after almost 5 months living here in Chiang Mai. They're pretty generic, but it's pretty true. I'm about to end my time in Chiang Mai. We're in the heat of starting summer as well as the smoky season, so I've got about 2 weeks left here, and then I'm going to be heading south to Bangkok, and we'll see where we go next from there. So hope you enjoyed this. If you did, subscribe, like, leave a comment if you have any questions about it, or if you know of something that I missed as far as what you see as a pro or con of living in Chiang Mai. Catch you in the next one.